On this week's episode of the Jesse T Show, me putting out my story, my travels, my journey, all in the hopes that it helps you in your walk in life and in business.
Well, hey guys, I am so jacked about today's time together, an interview I would call it, but it's really going to be a conversation with a guy that I admire a ton. We've known each other for a few years. Firstly and foremostly, he came in as a student, right? He found some of my work and we were privileged to find each other and for me to have the honor of sharing a few things that I might know with him. And he really took that and has just grown tremendously. And so I want to talk about him. I want this to be about his story. Really, he needs to share this with the world, because one of the things that I have found in life is so many of us own aspects of our life, Jesse. So Jesse Tedisco on his own program today is learned to own his own world and to share that confidently, because it's a lesson. It's a lesson in wisdom. And so I want to talk through your story today, Jesse, and share that with your audience and mine and others, because I think it's valuable to the world. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you so much, man. I love you. You're a great mentor, great friend. I look up to you and I partner with you. And I think that having you do this is one of the best people that could do it. So thank you for doing it. Everybody know that's listening and watching. This is not going to be self-serving or making me look a certain way. It's just, I've found in my journey that being, open and vulnerable and honest and genuine is all that matters. And there's a freedom in telling your story and showing your scars. And I want people to be able to learn from this and get what they need to get from this. And maybe it'll help them in their business or their life or their relationship. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish today.
Yeah, right on. I think so many people like to speak about the word vulnerability. Thanks to people like Brene Brown, right? Who's taught that to the world in some sense, but not too many people know how to actually truly be that way. And I think you are. And so let's get into it a little bit and tell everybody about your world. And so I know, being a financial advisor now, being in that entrepreneurial side of the financial advice business, sometimes we as advisors, we in that space where we give guidance to people about their wealth, feel like, gosh, I needed to come up in a family that was wealthy. And I know all this because of my upbringing, but your story is different. Where you started, you didn't start on the blue blood side of the tracks, if you will, did you?
That's right. No, I didn't. I have a very unique story, and I'm very glad that I traveled down this road of life so far. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. I currently reside in Georgia, but I grew up.
You need to say the O so everybody can hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. It might come out during the conversation.
All right.
It's kind of muted, just being down in Georgia for 13 plus years. But I grew up in the city of East Boston, which is just outside of the actual, I guess, Boston proper, as some people call it. And I grew up in a very non-traditional way. My parents were never married. They fell in love, and I was their child of love, so to speak. And but that's right. That's right.
Their love tree.
That's right. I brought the love to the world. And so, my mother and father, they grew up, not with much means to their names. And so they were just trying to make it blue collar, no collar. For my mother being from Kentucky, my dad actually being from the city that I grew up in, East Boston, I had these two sides to me where there was kind of like a Southern exposure, some Southern gentleman to it. And then there was also that city street rough and tumble. So I kind of had two sides to my life growing up. And growing up, I lived with my mom. She was a single mom, after my mom and dad were together for a few years, split ways. And really the biggest reason for that was my father was a 40-year heroin addict.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He beat the addiction, which was amazing, and became the best man at my wedding. And a funny joke about that story was when I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dad, we've been through so much together. There was a point in my life where I hated him because he wasn't around, and I had come to accept him and love him and forgive him and know him." I called him up from Georgia, and this was in 2005, 2006, just before I got married. I said, "Hey, Dad, I'd love for you to come down to Georgia," which we'll talk about that in a second, how he never traveled outside of Boston.
Okay.
Come to Georgia, and I'd love for you to be the best man at my wedding. And he looks at me, or he talked to me on the phone in his accent and said, what, you don't have any friends? Like a true
Of course.
guy.
You
And I
just,
was like, well, yeah, I do, but this is like a big thing for me. It's, I love you, and I want to show you that like I've mended that fence, and I want you to be in my life moving forward, be in my kids' lives and my wife's life. And he accepted after he gave me a little bit of shit. So,
that's awesome.
I have another groomsman, but my dad was my best man in my wedding. So that was interesting.
That's super interesting and cool. And it's hilariously like a dad thing. Like he's worried about you don't have anyone else worthy of asking. You're asking,
Right.
man, that's super
Yeah.
funny. Now, would you say, you're in that entrepreneurial space right now? Like, so part of the type of financial services you provide is independent of the big firms, independent of, I don't have to get paid by you buying something from me. So you're on this very unique side of the spectrum. Where do you think is the origin of that for you? Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial home? Were you a kid that did this? How did that happen?
So it's interesting because, I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial home, but there were bits and pieces scattered throughout both sides of family. There were some business owners in the family, so I knew of it through family ties, but never directly. But I did always have this natural knack for people and wanting to ask questions and wanting to be around people and learn things. And, when I was younger, it all catered around sports, basketball, baseball, football. And I would walk the most random person in the city of Boston that looked like they were tall and ask them if they could dunk a basketball because I just wanted questions, and they were like, well, I don't even play basketball. What are you talking about? So I always had this natural inquisitive style and learning and talking to people.
Lifelong student.
Yeah, like a lifelong student.
Right.
Look at it now, I'm a student so that I can lead. I want to be able to learn and give back. And so the one thing I could say about business was I was really big into comic books, baseball cards when I was a kid, and had some friends that were into that. And I actually used to buy, sell, and trade comic books as a kid. So as a kid, I was just doing it because I loved it, but I didn't know what that meant. That was like an entrepreneurial trait that was inside of me.
Yeah.
I was shoveling snow, and you're from, Minneapolis or Minnesota area. You know about the snow.
Yep.
We were shoveling snow for pennies on the dollar for our neighbors, trying to make a little bit of a hustle.
Yeah.
I didn't come from money, and so I definitely needed to make some money. And so I started working when I was pretty early. I was about 14, working summer jobs, and had an internship in high school where I was working almost full time because back during those days, in the late 90s when I graduated high school was 99, there was like this co-op program where you would go for your major core curriculum, the math, science, English, but as soon as like 10 o'clock in the morning rolled around, you were able to leave school and go work. And so I was actually an intern at Massport, which is the agency that airport. So I had some exposure to leaders there, the director of aviation, director of security of the airport, and it attracted me. Business and being in, I guess, positions of power is what it looked like to me, where you could manage things and have responsibility. That
independence, maybe.
attracted me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's cool. Tell me I remember a story that you shared when we first met about carnival games or something along that line.
Yeah. So along with the buying, selling, trading comics and shoveling snow here and there, being enterprising, I would set up in my driveway. I had a little driveway on the side of the house where I used to have a basketball hoop, but I would set up these little rinky-dink carnival games like toss this over here or do this over here, like very rudimentary because I wasn't an engineer. So I was just trying to create these little things. My friends would give me like a dime or a nickel or a quarter, charge them for it. So there was this little passion and entrepreneurial hustle that I didn't know what it was 20, 30 years ago.
Right. It's funny, you use the word rinky-dink and carnival in the same sentence. I think all carnival games are sort of rinky-dink, right?
Pretty much, right?
So you were like ahead of your time. And
the prizes are even worse. They're even more rinky-dink. It's just like this bear you spent $40 for that was $1.
Yeah. So interesting. So you grew up in a house that wasn't really entrepreneurial, but you noticed maybe other people and things in your own heart that were like, I enjoy this aspect of it. Maybe the people, the independence, as you mentioned, maybe a little bit of power, prestige.
Sure.
There's other parts of your childhood though that were not so fun, right?
Right.
You had to overcome, and maybe had to overcome later now as an adult.
For sure. Yeah. And so outside of dealing with a dad that wasn't around, even though he lived a few miles down the road, it was interesting because the schools I went to, it's such a small community. Everybody knew each other for decades. Like I know people that have known me for my whole life in Boston growing up there. It's a really interesting community tie, but just talking about how people know each other up there. I grew up with hearing how my dad was like this huge athlete with these great expectations and he threw it away for drugs. And so I had that narrative, and people would always talk about that. And so that didn't, always make me feel good. But also another thing too was I went to a Catholic school in Boston, and it doesn't seem like a rough place, but from third grade to about seventh grade, third grade to seventh grade, I was bullied very heavily to the point where
Wow.
home from school every day and I would get jumped every day by 2 or 3 people, sometimes 4 people. And it was always one person that was doing it, but the other kids were kind of group mentality, pack mentality, hanging around, watching it go on. No one ever stepped in. And I was, for some reason, I was tough and I could handle myself, but I was afraid to fight back. There was fear that was gripping me. And I don't know what it was. I was already getting my ass kicked. So I don't know why I was afraid, but I think also part, I'm a father now, and I pride myself being a really great dad and always learning dad. If I had a strong male figure there, I think someone probably would have stepped in and said, hey, like stick up for yourself, or this is how you do this, or maybe have my back a little bit. So I actually walked around hiding that fact from my mother. My mother never knew I was bullied until I was older. I was ashamed of it. It made you feel small. And so, I was bullied for some years. And it was,
You're not a small dude. Like, I don't know if we all grow at different paces times or whatever, but
sure.
Yeah, you're certainly not a, like diminutive person or something. Like you'd be the obvious target of that kind of thing.
You know what it was? And I have some ownership in this too. I used to run my mouth a lot. So playing sports, playing basketball, I was a little cocky. And maybe that was just because, I needed to shine somewhere in life. And so I'm sure it got me in trouble a few times and I earned a few punches. But there was a lot of times where I don't think I did. And, at the end of the day, I wouldn't take it back. I've forgiven all those people. I went through some counseling and coaching with my wife. We can talk about that later, but had to throw those things over my shoulder and just, let them be what they were. And they made me who I was today. I mean, without those things, I wouldn't be someone who can push through and persevere and, both a fighter, in martial arts and a fighter in business and a fighter in relationships. I mean, those things probably wouldn't have happened. So,
yeah. I definitely see that in you, and that, sometimes we don't know why something's happening in the moment. Sometimes it's decades or, many years later for sure before we see the fruit of that thing in our lives, And so for you to be bullied and to be pushed and maybe you're a little bit, cocky or whatever it is, that was probably a little bit of some of the wounds, like you said, from your own parents and your dad's situation. But, even you to talk to, say a client or a person in your life, like, not everybody's dad was a heroin addict for 40 years and lived,
right.
He recovered from it, came back into your life, so these things, can wound us, but they can also fortify us. And for me, it seems like it's fortified you. And, you on top of your dad's story, and I think it'd be I think it'd be important to walk through what is it like to have a father that is a drug addict, for that long, the formative years of your life and beyond. And then the things, talk about what happened to your mom and her career, and then what happened in her health.
Yeah. So with having a parent that was a drug addict, it was always that longing for a relationship that wasn't there. It was always wanting, a father figure, a friend that wasn't there. So there was always that emotional and mental scarring. But, there was, I can just give you an illustration. So there were times in the holidays where, it was Christmas or a birthday or something. And if he wasn't around for it, he would show up on the holiday while he was doing drugs and ask for money. And we didn't have a lot, obviously, single mom. And so with 2 kids, and those things I remember at that time, as I was so frustrated with him. I was brokenhearted. I was angry, all the different feelings you feel. Yeah. But at the same time, as much as I thought I hated him, or time I hated him, I wanted him around as much as it probably wouldn't have been good for me, because that's
desired that connection, right?
Yeah. And so that instilled in me when I was younger to want to have meaningful relationships with friends and family, but then also be a really good dad, because I didn't have that. But the one saving grace I can say is I always found myself, or I would say God put good people into my life. So that was a good thing. And then also my grandfather on my dad's side made his effort to try to be involved and try to come to baseball games and try to come by for birthdays and take me out for things. And so at least there was that, where I still had that connective tissue to that side of the family, but also had like somewhat of a father figure for a while.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Did you follow in your dad's footsteps at all? Like, was
I
that
did, yeah. With that entrepreneurial spirit and that need and desire to, I guess, even just make money because we didn't have any. You get caught up in, and I know a lot of these listeners and viewers on the podcast and the show, for those that don't know, this area and just Boston in general is one of the hotbeds for like heroin, opiate.
Amazing. I had no idea.
It's really bad. I think there was a documentary a couple of years ago on HBO, like Cape Cod being one of the worst places in the world for this.
Yeah.
One of the big things was years and years ago, there was a drug that came on the market called OxyContin, which is basically in a pill. It's for people that need pain management therapy, where people are prescribing these drugs to try to take away their pain. And I'm all about holistic these days, all about not doing stuff. So, and I'll get to why in a second. But these pain pills found their way to the community, and it was weird because I grew up in an environment where you have a lot of tough guys and people that are growing up without money, so they're doing what they can to hustle, as they call it, but not legally. So I had a lot of friends that were dealing drugs and doing kind of shady things. And so being around that environment, you get attracted to, well, this guy's got a new car, and this guy's got a motorcycle, and this guy's doing this, and he's going here. And I'm like, well, I want to do that too.
Yeah, FOMO.
Yeah, I worked. I had an internship. I worked for years. I still, I was put myself through community college. I didn't have a lot to go with that. So I started actually selling weed back in the day. Really small amount, nothing crazy. But my entrepreneurial spirit, number one, was the selling and the business side to make money. But I started hiring people with the weed, and I would pay them in weed because I didn't really smoke that much. And so they'd give me the money, and I'd give them like a nickel or a dime, and they'd be happy. So there was that entrepreneurial recruiting sales side that was building, but not necessarily in the legalist of ways, if that's even a word. And then that evolved to when OxyContin came on the scene. The money was way bigger, $1,000 a day. But you weren't doing a good thing. But at that time, I was just stupid and making poor choices. I actually started selling that for a while.
Right.
And I tried it one time personally myself. And at that time, it made me nauseous and sick and throw up. And I was like, I'll never do this again. But whether it was my dad, genetics, there was an addictive personality, or being in a station in life I wasn't happy with, being stuck, I just fell back on it like a couple of years after I tried it the first time, hanging around with the wrong people that were doing a lot of that stuff too. Yeah. Made it easy to make excuses to get in there and do it. And so I actually, overall, total time, I went on like a 2.5-year drug addiction. Pause in between because I was in the military. But I started out doing OxyContin, and I was doing it pretty heavy. Yeah. And broke for the military to try to save my life. My mom was ex-Army, and she would go military, straighten out your life. She comes from a very militaristic family. My dad's side of the family, there were some military veterans, so that was there. And I used it as a way to escape, but I never got over those demons. So when I got out of the military and came back to Boston, I went back to my old habits. Right. Old habits led into almost a year long. So it's a total of 2.5 years of drug use, but almost a year long after the military of doing heroin because the OxyContin got too expensive. So I became my father. I was living with my father. I was seeing what he was doing. I was doing some of the same things he was doing. Weird, sick way that brought me closer to him because now I understood a little bit more about him that I could never understand before. And so I did that for about a year. And then I had a sister living in Georgia at the time. This is the end of 2005. We get into conversations, start talking. She's like, why don't you come down for the spring? Talking about spring 2006. And I had just gotten back from the military at that point. And I was in Boston, and I was doing some of these bad things. And I was like, I need to change my life or I'm going to end up dead or in jail. Right. She gave me the opportunity to come down to Georgia. And it was in 2006. I've been clean. I went cold turkey from the drugs. Didn't have to go to any kind of rehab, thankfully. Been clean since 2006, and life blossomed and burgeoned from there. Yeah, it's an amazing story. Now, a lot of people are ashamed, and a lot of us have shame in our lives. I was bullied. I grew up in this kind of family that was, maybe by society standard, dysfunctional, right? I think every family is dysfunctional. Absolutely dysfunctional. Yeah. So, now I'm in business and I'm guiding people and I'm an entrepreneur. I think what message would you tell those people that, would look at you and maybe, there's two kinds of people. They would look at you and go, oh, good. He also had
trials he had to go through, and
Yep.
he's recovered and is stronger and better. And then there's those people who would look at you and go, kind of condescendingly and maybe judge you.
Sure.
So how has that background, sort of led you to where you are today with your family and your business and your ability to guide people? And why
That's
does
right.
that matter to tell this story? Why does that matter?
I think the first and foremost thing is you want to know who you're dealing with in life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the core competencies, the cognitive biases, likability. Do you like, know, and trust somebody? I think that's huge in any relationship, not just business, but personal. But I think that when you show your warts or scars, how they call them, and you have a need to share that with people so that you can put that out there, you're going to have a lot of relatability for people that have been through somewhat similar situations, or even if it's not the same situation, just a struggle they've had to overcome that they felt was insurmountable. Because some of these things that we're talking about and that we will talk about for some people feel insurmountable. And so I can connect on a much deeper level with people because of it. And I can have better relationships, lifelong relationships with people because of it. And so I think that for the folks that get it, great, awesome. You're part of my tribe, or you understand. And for the folks that may look down on it, it's either they don't understand it or they disdain it so much that they're not open enough to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I generally don't meet an enemy or someone that doesn't understand, because I'm able to relate to people. So like you always talk about in business as my coach and mentor, you don't want to bring everybody on as a client. You don't want PITA, a pain in the ass, an old military term, but also a Patrick Tucker term. You don't want a PITA, a PITA. So I don't want a pain in the ass client that's going to give me shit for something I did when I was a kid. But at the same time, I'll walk with anybody and help anybody that needs help. But it's just going to be that reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, and I think so many people out there that are working with you, that are listening to this, can relate to, I've been through some troubles, or I've had recent troubles even, and it'd be really nice to have somebody that can understand that and not judge me, as a potential client. They sometimes in financial services, clients come in as like they have to have everything right before they get in the door, right?
Yeah. And that's the worst way to do it.
Yeah, and it's a hospital for the sick, not for the perfect. And so you want to bring those people in that are looking for guidance and, sort of healing, if you will, around these areas of life. And I think somebody that's done that. So where are you today? Tell me about like your sons, your family, your,
Sure.
all of it.
Well,
like what's going on?
The brief kind of quick overview to make it make sense. So in 2006, when I moved down to Georgia, I just completely decided to change my life and get back to what I wanted to do. I was putting myself through college for a while, and I was working, stuff like that. So I had goals and drive, but when you have a drug addiction, those things go away. So once away from that, came to Georgia, I was able to clear my head, restart. I started in a sales company that offered a franchisee opportunity. If you could basically cut the mustard, so to speak, if you could make it, you would have to prove yourself in the field of sales. You'd have to prove yourself in the training department. You'd have to prove yourself in the management department. Depending on how long it took, based on your work ethic, your people skills, and your student mentality, how quickly you can learn these things, it was up to you before you could get to this place. So I was presented with an opportunity when I first came to Georgia, where one of our best friends to this day, her name is Christina. She's a really successful real estate agent here in Georgia. She's Auntie Christina. And Alicia, who's an amazing badass in all ways. That's why I married her. She's great. I'm very lucky. They were running this business, and they brought me in as a sales rep. And basically, long story short, in about a year and a half, I went from entry-level door-to-door sales to running my own business. So it just changed the whole trajectory of my life. That what I was really good at, which was sales, obviously the people skills and dealing with people, and the work ethic of working 10, 12, 14-hour days out in the field, going door to door, knocking on doors, calling, working on commission. I loved it. I don't know what it was. It was just so weird. It's a hard job, but hard. Did well with it, built this company, and we took our franchise from Atlanta, Georgia. We moved it out to Charlotte, North Carolina, ran it out there for a few years, and did very well, but kind of got fat and lazy in ownership. And this failed sales position where you're a Spartan, you're the tip of the spear, to now I'm in the office running the office, lost touch with that work ethic. And so after about 3 or 4 years doing that, was kind of getting a little bit lazy, burnt out. But what happened, and this is part of the story too, Alicia, my wife, and I were dating at the time. We got pregnant, and this was our first pregnancy.
Yeah.
And we got pregnant with a daughter, Alana Marie Tedisco, who was the name of the company. So first, the company's name was JLT Marketing, very self-serving, Jesse Lee Tedisco Marketing. we knew we were going to have a daughter. And so, we got pregnant, healthy pregnancy. And then after our daughter was born, she came out injured at delivery. So Alicia had a 40-hour 40-hour labor. And she wanted to do it as holistic as possible without an epidural so that, baby and mom were alert and awake. And so the baby came out injured at delivery. And after 7 days of being in intensive care, there was no signs of life outside of the machines keeping her alive. So we had to let her go. We lost our daughter, passed away.
Yeah.
And, for two young kids that were successful in running a business, we didn't know how to deal with it. We just,
of course not.
Harder. We threw ourselves into work. I was working 80 hours a week, 70 hours a week, 7 days a week. And after a few months, the depression was so bad that I just didn't even want to get out of bed.
Right.
I had a team of people, we had about 30 people or so in my office. We were partnered with another guy that had another 25 people in his office. So there's 50, 60 people running around crazy, trying to sell stuff every day. And I have to lead them and motivate them. And I didn't want to get out of bed. And so after 3 months of that, we decided, Alicia and I, a couple things. She's from Georgia. I lived there for a while. She wanted to get back to family and start over. And for me, I was going to shut down the business. And in our minds, we were going to go work part-time. Again, working 70, 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
Now we're going to work 40, 50 hours a week, going to work for somebody else. So we shut the business down. And so that we started it in 2006 in Charlotte. And we shut it down in almost 2010. And we came back to Atlanta, Georgia. And we started our corporate career. And just to kind of fast forward through that, I started in banking as a banker. So with my sales skill that I had and with my relationship skills and business acumen, because I was dealing with business owners all day long at these going on sales calls, they took me on as a banker, senior relationship banker, which is where I dealt with individuals and businesses on opening deposit accounts, loans, lines of credit. They trained the product stuff. I had the other raw skills that they needed.
Yeah.
That career took off. In 2011, I ran that career for 4 years, became a high-performing branch manager, business banker, to where I was one of the number 1 out of 9 top branch managers in all of Georgia for SunTrust Bank, which now isn't SunTrust Bank anymore. It's
of course not.
Just strange, but it's the biggest bank in Georgia. So we're the biggest bank in Georgia, the top of the top. I was crushing it, but I still wasn't happy. I still was missing out on that entrepreneurial spirit, that working for myself, that creating something. You're limited in those capacities, but I did gain the financial background. I did see financial planning from the lens of having a partner in the branch, and I think you can speak to this. Was a branch financial advisor that would come in and cover my branch that I was managing, plus like 2 other branches, and they would handle all the wealth clients, and they would come in and we would give them referrals. So I think, were you in that space for a while, somewhere in the banking side? Or?
So I definitely understand that. And so banks are very good about nepotism, keeping it in the bank, right? So
That's true.
Branch managers, personal bankers, private bankers, tellers were incented oftentimes. And so I think what I love about this part of your story for your clients and people that are learning more about you is that you saw the kind of the other side of the non-entrepreneurial side of financial services. In banking, you fully got exposed to it. You understand it. And so when we're relating to clients, we can understand kind of, what they're running up against. And then you stayed in banking for a while, and then you saw some more.
So 4 years in banking, succeeded at all the levels I was at, did very well, helped some people, solid career by any means. But again, still a hole in my heart for not doing what I truly was meant to do. And so I was looking, always had my door open. My back door was always open. Any opportunity came across my desk, I'd vet it out. It still stuck to my guns and stayed in banking. But one came across my desk that I couldn't turn down at the time. It was a recruiter from State Farm came and found me on LinkedIn, saw my background, saw I was a business owner, saw I was in banking, saw some other things I had done, and was interested to talk to me. And the conversation turned into, hey, you could become a State Farm owner, an agency owner, basically, franchisee in a sense. We're a company, but you're flying the State Farm flag and banner. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I want to be like an insurance salesman, because I didn't know much about State Farm, wouldn't unless they researched it. And so I came to find out that State Farm has a bank, and that was why they were chasing me down, because they were moving their banking have all the products and services that a bank has. They just do it virtually.
Yeah.
All the things I was doing mapped over there.
Nice.
Also, they had at that time, and they went on pause because of the Department of Labor ruling, but they're since back to it. But they have a financial planning arm of their business, a brokerage of State Farm, State Management Company.
Yep.
For me, it attracted me on two sides. I could get back to being a business owner, but I could also further my financial planning career. So I was like, let me do this. Let me go into State Farm, become an agent, and learn all these skills, and I will manage the banking and the financial advising piece of the business, and I will hire people to do the insurance side of the business. And that's what I did. And so I was with State Farm for about a year and a half. Because of whatever fate or cosmic powers that were meant to happen, I met somebody in that business who had direct control of my future in the form of what they call a sales leader. And this person, for the first 12 months of your contract as an agent, at the end of it, they could say, we don't want you, or you can continue to be an agent.
Woof. Yeah.
And just for some context why that's important, 2 weeks before I open my office, he and I get to a almost knockdown, drag out argument that started about his cell phone that he just bought that I didn't care about. And I don't say it in a negative way, like I didn't care. I called him out about it a little bit. So I'm in my office painting the walls to get it ready. 2 weeks later, grand opening, which we had an amazing grand opening, which he didn't show up to, by the way, because that's the type of person he is.
Right. Unfortunate.
Yeah, it's rough. So he asked me, he brings in his cell phone. He's like, look at this cool phone. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool, whatever. And he goes, yeah, it's got this great memory technology. You have a SIM card and you can take it in and out. And I'm like, well, what about the cloud? Like, and I just asked, something that kind of threw him off. And my wife attributes it to like a little kid getting a bicycle that you're not excited about their bike. and so we start getting into this weird banter where he's challenging me and throwing, kind of somewhat quasi insults around.
Yeah.
I'm not a punk kid anymore from Boston. I've been training and fighting martial arts for years. And I know how to handle myself. I was in the military. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I never have to use those things, but I was very confident and calm in that situation.
Yeah.
In Boston, calm. And so I look at him and I look at him face to face, like, you're my coach. Patrick's my coach. And I'm like, how is this helping either one of us? Like, how are we? I had to coach him and this guy's supposed to be my coach.
Right.
So from that moment on, I knew that there was not going to be a viable opportunity.
Time to go.
Probably forever hold that against me. And I'm not going to wait 12 months to find out this guy's not going to give me the contract.
Right.
After some long conversations with the missus, we decided to shut down the State Farm in January of 2017.
Okay.
And up to Tedisco Financial in February of 2017. So with a month lag to get things rolling and set up.
Right.
And I since I had all these licenses and experience, so I had the banking experience, entrepreneurial experience, I learned insurance in State Farm from life insurance, all different kinds of insurances.
Get the whole package.
Planning licenses. I put all that together. And in 2017 in February, we created Tedisco Financial.
Nice. So interesting, because I think the camel that broke the employee's back, right, and forced you back into really not getting away from financial services, but getting to a different way of financial services where, really you working for your clients and there's none of this, I could kill it and this guy could punt me. So you have this realization that many people don't realize as employees that, yeah, I have a lot of stability in my job, but I have zero freedom.
That's right.
And so freedom becomes a much more critical thing for many people that are in that entrepreneurial space. And you've had, bullying when you're a kid, parents that, are dysfunctional, as you said, drug dealing father, you got into drugs, overcame all of that, going to the military, had a little fun in the military, learned some things, some discipline in the military,
Teamwork.
Lost a child which I'm sitting here as a father going, what's the hardest thing in the world that I could ever imagine going through? And that would have to be it. I can't imagine anything more painful than losing a child. So you've learned all these things, right, that are so difficult. And so now you've got this business, you're giving guidance to people, you're living a great example to your children, with fitness and other things that you're doing. You said you're approaching things differently today,
That's
right,
right.
than you used to. And you're obviously your mindset is stronger through the disciplines of martial arts, the disciplines of the military, the disciplines of your own growth and determination. And you're open-minded to coaching, because you and I work together in that front, which I can attest to his ability to adapt and learn and push through things that are uncomfortable, which is part of what coaching is about.
Yep.
And so I think as a wrap a bow around all of Jesse for his audience, like, how do you utilize all these pockets, all these little, for some people to divide their brain into components, or like little boxes, right?
Yep.
So what is the key differentiator in you that your story is so valuable to your clients and to the people you work with and you partner with and that you serve? What is it about you that, is different? It's like, why should they consider a guy that's had this background as an advisor versus that person that's plain vanilla, right? That just came
Yep.
up in the burbs and they had the perfect, the Beaver family or whatever it is, leave it to Beaver. And, why does that matter when giving guidance to people?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And thank you for asking that. So the biggest thing is there's nothing wrong with having a great life growing up. There's nothing wrong with having the things that you require and need and deserve. That's the life that we're giving to our kids and the people around. So, I want to be able to give that life I didn't have. But the reason why it was important for me to grow up the way that I did and share that with my clients and why it matters to them is three things: empathy, gratitude, and forgiveness. And so as a coach of an advisor, you have to have empathy for the people you're working for. You have to feel and know where they're coming from and totally understand at some level how to walk them through a season of finance or a season of business or a season of life, because you've been there, or someone who has, and you have the empathy and the knowledge on how to get through that. The gratitude for me, I've been through all this stuff. There's a couple things we didn't talk about, which I'll touch on in a second. There are some pretty imperative, impactful, crazy things to go through. And I'm so grateful that I have gone through those things. I wouldn't change one thing of it, either something that was bad that happened to me or that I did myself, because it made me who I am today, and it allows me to connect with so many more people on a much deeper level. So I'm super thankful for those things. And then I talk about forgiveness for myself for some bad stuff that happened to me, whether doing or not doing, forgiveness for certain things. I mean, all these things help you become a better human being and a better advisor, right? Those few things, I think, is what separate me from the average person, because I can relate better, I understand better, I can lead better, and I can learn better because I'm self-aware on those things.
Yeah, I think watching you with people and just you in general in your life, I think one of the great things that someone with the background that you have can do is, many people have had things happen, right? Life is tough for many, many people in different ways. And I think the one thing that you can help them see is that you don't want to stay living there.
That's right.
Right? You don't want to say, yeah, I grew up with a shitty upbringing, or I had this bad business experience, or I went through this terrible relationship, and keep reliving that over and over and over for the next period of time. Like,
That's
why
right.
would you grow up with a shitty life and continue to live it? And you've found a way to, pass through that and use it as a springboard to something better for you, for your children, for your spouse, for your clients, for your network of people. And that, to me, is a super inspiring thing that many, many, many people need that help with. And it may not feel like financial advice, but anywhere life and finances intersect, we can help. And you've had some pretty major freaking intersections.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So there's a couple other parts of your world you mentioned a minute ago that
before jumping into a couple other topics, there was a piece that I didn't want to leave out. So when we lost our daughter, my wife and I were trying to find our way. We had accomplished in business, we had accomplished some things in life, but we needed to really figure out how to get over that. And so my wife and I sought out counseling, and we found a company called Broken Chains, which is here in Georgia. It used to be right down the street from one of the branches I was managing.
Huh.
And it just gave us the tools necessary for our relationship, for other relationships. And so I'm a huge advocate for that. We talked about love languages. We talk about all these
good stuff
that are super important in relationships that translate over to business, that translate over to financial planning conversations. So, we lost our daughter years ago in 2009. And then our next pregnancy we had was a miscarriage. And so now, a really shitty way to say it, we were 0 for 2. Like, we didn't have anything to show for our pregnancies. And we were really, we didn't know where the road was going to take us. And so we got pregnant again for a third time. And I remember, I'm going through my spiritual journey in life, and we talk about this stuff that I'm into. Maybe going on a ayahuasca trip one day. We'll see how that works out. But I know that there is a greater power, and I know that there's a greater cause, and there's miracles. And one of the miracles, obviously, was our third pregnancy, which is our son Grayson. Now he just turned 5. But people that don't understand losing a child or have never been through that experience, which just kind of a keynote, 6 or 7 out of 10 pregnancies have some sort of complication. And so people understand that side of it, but they don't ever see the really bad side of it. And so people are asking us, hey, they found out we were pregnant, or we told people, like, what do you have in? What do you want? And boy or girl, and we're like, we just want a healthy baby. Right. At this point. And so one day I was praying and I was thinking to myself, and I was like, before we knew what it was, a boy or a girl, I had a feeling come over me in that moment, and it was telling me. So my wife thinks it was the Holy Spirit, because she's really big into that side of things, and I'm still kind of getting there, growing up Catholic, getting away from that, trying to figure it out. But I knew that we were going to have a boy, and I prayed to God, and I said, God, by your grace, protect my son. And so that was actually the inspiration for his name, Grayson's son. His name's Grayson, spelled different. But, awesome. Baby boy that's now 5. We have another child, William, who's going to be 3 in October. So in that vein of life hurdles, we turned that into a positive after the counseling and the coaching and the relationships established in business and in life. We started a nonprofit called Alana's Angels. And Alana's Angels helps parents go through the loss of a child, whether it's a miscarriage all the way up to, God forbid, someone's adult child passed away. We have processes, connections, and measures in place that help people get through that. And that's our nonprofit business. That's
beautiful.
We didn't talk about really quick, I think, because it's going to sound really weird when I get to the end of this part, was, my mom, she had ovarian cancer. And, she survived with that for 8 years before finally succumbing to it. And that was my mom. Like, my dad wasn't always around, and she was very disciplinarian and very.
She was a rock for you.
Yeah, she was a rock in my life. And so when she passed away, by the time I was 30, I held my daughter in my arms until she took her last breath. We took her off life support. I held her. My wife was right by my side, and I held her. And it took about 10 or 15 minutes for her to finally go. But I held my daughter in my arms before I was 30 until she passed away. I held my mom, her hand by her bedside until she passed away. So I had all these huge, huge things. And I say these things because I'm very grateful and very self-aware because of these things. And it's made me a better person. So I think that if people have gone through any of these situations, whether they're business people or, individual clients that I deal with, I can connect with them on a much deeper level. And then also the practical side of it, like, we've had to go through these things financially too. And we know how to do this, and we've built a great life for ourselves, and we've managed finances very well, and we've done very well financially, like, overall. And so being able to speak to it from a personal place to understand those things, but also from a practical business standpoint where I do this for a living, it's able to transcend over into the conversation very easily.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking as you're speaking about it, how I could imagine a lot of parents being in that place you were when you were struggling running that organization. You were having the depression, and you just didn't want to even come into work and lead people. I could see that happening. And I've also heard the term for your son Grayson, rainbow children.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure you're familiar
Rainbow
with that
baby.
term. Yeah. Rainbow baby. And so, thinking of him as that, as a rainbow baby, and having the name Grayson in the story, that's a beautiful, circle to keep the whole of the family connected, whether they're with us or they're somewhere else right now, so that's beautiful. I think your point about helping those that have gone through this is very important. It's important, if you're listening to this, that someone like Jesse is way more suited to help you than me, than anybody that's not been through that. right? It's not that I couldn't give you ideas or find you resources, but I haven't lived it. And so I can't look out that window like Jesse can. And that's a super, really important point that you make for your audience. Like, they need to know, and that's your point in sharing this. You said it at the beginning of our conversation, that you're not just here to talk about yourself for the hell of it, but you're here to talk about yourself to help, right?
Yep.
And that's a key distinction between somebody who's just a narcissist who likes to blab on their stories. To truth be told, like, you've kind of anguished for years about telling your story, right?
Yep.
And to show his humility, I really encouraged him to tell his story, people. So, he's a humble guy. He's not somebody that's going to normally tell you all these things, but I encouraged him to tell it because I think he can help a lot more people if he tells it.
I agree. And so now today, and thank you for those kind words. You have inspired me, and you have helped me move the needle in a lot of different directions, and not just financial planning. I mean, that's a skill and talent that you always have to hone, but the ones that even matter more: family, relationships, health and wellness, like all these things that coincide and come together. Just super impactful. So if we could talk about some of those things,
let's
jump into that side.
So you're a disciplined guy around those areas now, like, mindset stuff, gratitude,
Yep.
working out, health, diet, time with the boys, time with, your wife, all of that. Like, how do you do that? What's that look like in a day in, day out? Why are you doing that? How are you doing it?
Yep. So after all those life events and after all those understandings that life is finite, you're not guaranteed the next second. Right. And so I understood that when I hit age 30, I learned all that very quickly in life. I felt like I've lived a couple lifetimes. Thankfully, right. I came out a bit better on the other side. But
yeah, it's like that country song, Tim McGraw, my next 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Smoke a little less, drink a little less, all that. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing now. So, but I got into self-development very heavily because I was always learning and wanting to get better.
Yeah.
And on the mental side, the mindset side, I was really trying to figure out some things. And on the slew of things I've learned, the one that stuck out at that time frame in my life that probably found me was a term from the Stoics, memento mori. Yeah. And memento mori means basically know that you're going to die, so live your best life today. And so there's a story of Marcus Aurelius from years and years ago, antiquity, amazing leader. He was so successful in his time, but he was so self-aware. He brought somebody in to his life that would walk paces behind him and mention to him, remember that you're just a man. Remember that you're just going to die, because he didn't want his head getting too big. And that's very amazing. And his thing that he came up with, or during that time, was memento mori, which is, for me, live your best life today because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so that opened up a whole new way of thinking for me and a whole new lifestyle for me, to where focusing on mindset and being my own technician, knowing I had a lot of negative self-talk, probably from coping mechanisms growing up. So like a lot of things are fight and flight in life, and some people tell themselves things. So one of the easiest things you could do to erase that is tell yourself something positive instead of the negative thought right away. So if I'm not good enough, no, I am good enough, and this is why, and like getting back into it. Reading books, getting into David Goggins and his mindset.
He's a beast.
Has been huge. He's incredible. His story is crazy.
Yeah.
He had a very crazy story upbringing too. And this guy is one of the highest leaders or highest ascenders in all the military branches. He's qualified for Ranger, Navy, Air Force TAC P. Like, if you do one of those things, you've completely crushed it in life. He's done it all.
Right. And then he goes out and runs all these crazy races and shit.
Yeah, and so his running, and so the one thing I've really taken from him out of the many things is the running. And so for me, I was never a runner. I was never someone who was, I was always into fitness and sports, but I didn't really know that there's levels. There's levels of this. And so I picked up the running piece, and the running has helped my mind so much because no one really wants to run. There's a few people like it, but most people know they kind of like, they have to do it. And so the other day, funny story, I posted this on social media. I was like, I woke up today. I knew I had to train. I trained 5-6. I didn't want to run. So you know what I did? I ran.
Right. Right.
I think just the self-development of mindset, the health and wellness that ties together with that.
Yeah.
You know this as a financial planner that's into fitness and health and wellness and nutrition and optimizing the body. you're a better business person because of
Yeah,
it.
there's definitely an ROI on that stuff. That's the way I would discuss it, right? Like that your time spent. A lot of people are like, well, I don't have time to fill in the blanks, jump rope, run, lift, whatever, be with my family. There's an ROI on that. So that stuff that your brain functions faster, it's clearer, you're more energized when you're on, you're rejuvenated, and there's no doubt that there's a return. No doubt.
Absolutely. Some of the other things that I focus on, with family, um, there's this term I heard years ago called silos. You have different silos from your business,
Yeah.
your family, your fitness, your relationships. And if
Yeah.
one of those are off, it affects the other ones.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to maintain an even level or a quality level of those things. And so for me, getting off the cell phone at least one day a week on a Sunday, I don't touch my cell phone. We have date nights with the kids and sometimes without the kids. We're very lucky and fortunate enough to be able to do those things. But spending time with family has been a huge piece. So picking up the kids early from school or taking them on we call them road dates. So for instance, my wife is out of town this week. She's in New Orleans. She's a director of leadership and training for this called Net Checks. And so she's gone for the week. And so I get the kids a little bit early each day and we go to the park and we go play and sometimes we'll go eat. And so I think that keeping those things in your life and being cognizant of where they are gives you, there's never going to be a perfect balance, but it gives you a fulfillment you need to be able to continue to strive during the hard time.
Yeah. And I think this is important for people that are listening to you about how to do things in their life. There's no magic formula. A lot of people are in love with the idea of I'm a runner, right? And it's those times when you felt like, shit, I'm not running today, but I posted and I'm accountable now. Yeah. That's why I use a trainer. I know how to do most every exercise my trainer ever has me do. I know what to do, but I'm paying for the accountability of him pushing me that much more and making sure I show up and all those kinds of things. But the thing that's interesting that many people strive for, and I think it's a fallacy, is that life work, sort of balance, right? You think of it as a pendulum that kind of swings or a teeter totter that goes up and down. And there's really never any balance. I loved your silo analogy in that, sometimes you're working too much, sometimes you're spending too much on family, sometimes you're, so it's this thing where you swing back and forth. But the people that I think have the most success with this have learned how to be present when they're focused on each of those things. That's so right. The bro date, the daddy date, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. You're focused on your sons in those moments, or son, maybe you do it one at a time. Yeah. When you go with your wife, you're focused on her. When you're with your clients, you're focused on them. You're not on your mobile device or what have you, distracted with those kind of things. And that's an important aspect of keeping it all together, if you will, right? Because that's really what you're saying about personal development. And your discussions at the beginning of this, when you were like figuring out the carnival games or selling the comic books or the weed story is even funny. Like I didn't have any money to pay them, so I paid them in a product and I didn't really want to be distributing it. That's a learning thing. Like it's always in you. And so a lot of people want to be better at this. So, your example of just starting it and then being accountable with people, I think is one of the key distinguishers that a lot of people are missing, is that they use motivation. And you spoke about Goggins. He loves to say motivation is shit. It doesn't matter. It is. It's about discipline and systems and things like this. There's a lot of good systems that you've put in place that make sure, that you do run or that you do jump rope or that you do spend time. And those are things you're teaching your clients, I believe, in that they need their money managed and their wealth, well understood. But if they don't apply it properly, what the hell's the point?
Yeah. And you know what it is? You're absolutely right. And, financial planning is technical. It's specific. There's science behind it, but there's also the soft sciences, which you always talk about, right?
Yes.
So it's relationship management 101. It's being empathetic. It's being able to understand behaviors, being able to modify or halt behaviors, right? So there's a lot of psychology, behavior finance that goes into it. And I could say that You always need to be cognizant of the technical side and the emotional side when dealing with a client, but also you need to go outside the box and realize that no matter what you do in life, if you're a power lifter, if you're a race car driver, if you're a dad, if whatever, you're never going to be the best. There's always someone that's going to be better than you or someone who's further ahead of where you are.
Yeah.
For me, as a lifelong student and someone who's always had mentors at one level or another, whether they're coaches in sports or whether they're people outside of sports, in the military, wherever, you want to have people in your life that can help you get to where you want to be more efficiently, enjoy the ride better, look at things a little bit differently. And so, for me, a huge secret to my success has been coaching. And people say that they can see it in our interaction I've had you as a coach for some time now.
Yeah.
And there's just different things we discuss. There's business, there's family, there's fitness, nutrition. Yeah. And it's completely catapulted just my awareness and my thinking. So if there's one thing I could tell people that are listening or watching, find someone that you admire, that you know, that you trust. Specifically, if it's for business, let's say, make sure there's someone that's in the same business that's succeeded in that business so they can to it. And not that they haven't had failures or speed bumps, but you don't want to ask a doctor who's never run a business before how to go run a business. Yes, yes, they know what they're doing in their profession.
Exactly.
They can't tell me how to be a badass entrepreneur, financial planner like Patrick Tucker can.
Yeah.
So
well,
find those people.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of bullshit coaches out there, and particularly with the ease in which somebody can put a thing up online now, right? A course or my new system or whatever. I love all these passive income systems, right? Just
bullshit.
Do this and go sit on the beach. It's a bunch of shit because they've not actually done the work to be a passive investor. And most people don't even know what passive investing means. They just think it sounds sexy and cool. But, the thing is, you definitely want a coach that has had some successes, but the reason likely that they've had any successes is because they've had a lot of bumps along the way.
Yep.
And I think it's the same for you with your clients. The reason they ought to work with you is because you stubbed your toe, and you know what it looks like. And so, you talked about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has the confessional, right? When we sin I'm a Catholic guy. When we sin in the Catholic Church, we have this opportunity to go, reveal those sins and have confession, right? And so the beauty of that is that it's not there for people that have never fucked up. It's for the exact opposite reason. Yeah. And coaches should be accelerants. Financial advisors should be accelerants for their clients, not to be smarter, but not to fuck up as much.
That's right.
Right. So if I can help a client, whether it's you or a financial advisory client, just make one less mistake in their life, I can probably save them a decade and probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars, depending on what that mistake might look like. That physician running a business that's not related to medicine, those kinds of things. So it's beautifully well said. And it's super important that your audience knows you're human and all the scars and the wounds and the tattoos and the warts and the stuff that you have makes you who you are, and all the more reason that they should be hiring you and trusting you. Because the thing that you didn't say directly that I think is the most important thing is that you surround them with these areas of life that you're going to talk to them about, but the bigger encompassing circle is that of care. Yeah. I would call it love when I talk to my coaching students, is that all of it is done because you love the person, you care about them. They're not just
filial love, like you always call it. Yep.
Yeah, it's brotherly love, and that's the Latin term for it. And I think when you were at the tip of the spear, you called it, when you're in that sales world, you saw the bloodthirstiness of just commissioned sales. Like it can really warp your mind of, is this better for Jesse or is this better for my client? And now you've come all the way around through the different financial services industries, the different ways of conducting yourself, the lacks of freedom, the turmoil, the strife, all of this. And you realize that in the middle of all that shit is the person who just wants to be taken good care of.
That's it.
And you've designed your business to do that in a way that there's no perverse incentives. And that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and for for those that don't understand the financial planning world, and you've done this a lot longer than I have, but I understand it to a degree. And so going back to having a coach, and then I'll talk about that piece. Going back to having a coach, you might know the path. A lot of people in the world that are in business or just in life, they kind of have a general concept or they know what to do. It's just a matter of doing it. And then it's also a matter of knowing the path broadly. Yeah. So someone who's been in the industry and the business, specifically the one that I'm into and that I want to, enhance in, yes, I can get there, but if I can get there cleaner, more efficiently, smarter, knowing the path broader versus just knowing that end goal, and having someone like you to walk me through that path is super important.
Yeah.
And then just going back to the financial planning piece, and like you talked, I think that people have to understand it just comes down to people, no matter what you're doing in any business, and how my mentality years ago is I want to leave the world a better place, but the way that you do that is leave people better than you found them. Right. So in any aspect of life, if I can leave you better, if you leave me better, it's a beautiful handshake. We help each other. That's the way I operate my business.
Yeah, that's glorious, man. That's beautiful. And the guidance that you just described, analogy that came to my brain, because you're a lucky bastard that follows the Patriots and they've won a lot of football.
Very lucky.
Is the Patriots use the entire field to go down field.
That's
and
right.
Many businesses like to just keep jamming it up the center, jamming up the center. And it, doesn't work. And they don't learn how to use sideline to sideline. And so in coaching people in financial advice, what we want to do is help them realize that we're here to help you sideline to sideline, but we're moving towards the end zone.
Yep.
Right. We're not just going to jam it up your face, up the middle, because that's probably not best for you. Right. And we're not the Patriots. But
man, I'll tell you, super spoiled, man. Since the 2001, all the way till now, Boston sports has been on a tear, man. It's Boston sports, man. I'm very lucky.
Ridiculous. And I'm a Minnesota guy by upbringing, so my Vikings are just still killing me.
The best thing that ever came from Minnesota was Kevin Garnett to
to the Celtics.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So just overall, I think that if people who receive this message take it for what you will, I'm going to tell my story for the rest of my life, and it's going to get or clearer or better. You find your tribe. You find people that are going to help you. And Patrick always talks about this, the rule of thirds when it comes to relationships. You have a third of your friends that are just above you and they can help pull you up. You have a third of your friends that are right where you are and you can share common stories. And you have a third of your friends that you're helping pull them up. And so you're kind of a mentor coach, but coaching's 360. Coaching, you coach me, I coach you, we help each other. And I think that having a mentor is one of the biggest secrets to my successes. Is having someone to connect with, to grow with, and to lead with, and to follow.
Sure. Yeah, right on. Right on. It's a beautiful story. I think it should inspire you guys to work with this man. He's a good human being, and there are fewer and fewer really vulnerable, good human beings that can be trusted. And when you find one, you should stay with them.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. You took your time out of your day. I know you have a lot going on, and just getting this message out to the world. People that are going to hear it, they'll receive it how they will, and we're here to help. So if you're in Omaha, go see Patrick. If you're in Georgia, come see me. All
right. Right on. It's been a pleasure, Jesse. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right. Love you, brother.
Love you.
All right.
All right. So I want to, you have something similar, but mine's just a sparring guy.
Oh, nice. Look at that.
It's the same exact thing. And I had this before I even knew you.
Nice.
I was reading your thing in the back. It's the same thing. I choose.
Yeah, it is.
My choice. Now you got like the bearded Viking and I got the Spartan.
Yeah, that's my heritage, man. I'm trying to aspire to be. I
figured these are both like our people. Like I think not too long ago that I have Mediterranean descent.
I always tell people that I tell my wife all the time when I'm around bearded dudes, I'm like, I found my people. We went to a beard competition a couple months ago now, and I didn't even know these things. Did you?
I had an idea like mustache or beard competition, but I've never.
No idea.
Yeah.
And I'm rolling through the mall with my son on one of those daddy dates that you were driving, and we had gone out to dinner and we shot guns because he's not 3. So we're like, we're going to go watch, I don't know, one of the new like Avengers or something was coming out. And we're a little early. So we ran into the mall that was next door to get some, like a cupcake or ice cream or something. And there's all these dudes at this table with these giant beards. And like, so we're walking by and I look over, I'm like, you guys are some beautiful people. You know, I made some comment like that. And they're like, oh, they're laughing. And so we start talking and they were planning this beard competition.
That's
so
awesome.
I got invited and we went. And it was a freak show, but it was hilariously fun.
How did you place? Did you actually get up and like, were you one of the?
I should have. I would have won my category. I didn't know how it worked. I thought it was going to be, you know, giant beards only. Well, there was like, I just paid to go in. It's at this little like live music bar here. That's kind of a dive.
Yeah.
And so they had like 9 categories. And there was one of the categories was like business beards.
That's awesome.
And the dude who won it was like, it was lame.
You would have crushed.
I'm like, shit. But they had like under 6 inches, over 12. They had like partials.
Yeah.
So dudes like Amish beards, you know, no mustache, or it was just, they had a women's division where the old ladies took like maid beards out of shit.
Has it been happening ever since, or has it stopped? Like, are you going to be able to get in the next one if they have one?
Yeah, they've been doing it for years. They actually raise money for what's the organization? It's for homeless vets. I forget the name of the organization. It was cool. They'd raised enough money to take 1,100 vets off the street.
That's a huge noble.
It was pretty impressive. There was 86 competitors at this thing. There's a lot of bearded dudes in this room. It was pretty awesome.
Being in the military, growing up with military influence, like, can you imagine your country, especially back, you know, even a few years ago when people go into Iraq and stuff and coming back and being displaced, like having these issues, whether you have physical or mental wounds or, you know, being left to like stay on the streets and having bad care. Like there's definitely a huge need there to take care of our own.
It's huge.
A lot better.
Yeah, there was a lot of dudes there that had been, you know, or not a lot, but it was cool. There's a lot of vets in the room, a lot of dudes with some amazing facial hair and amazing hair in general. Like it was like badass. I'm like, oh my God, dude, there was this guy that came up to me and he was like, you know what powerlifters look like?
Oh yeah.
He was like a
fire hydrant.
just a freaking anvil. And he has this giant, he's about 5 foot. I mean, I felt tall, like he's 5'5".
Yeah.
You know, so you had a dwarf him. And he has this huge beard and hair back in a ponytail. And he's just as biggest dude ever. And he's from Sioux Falls. And he walks up and I'm like, dude, please tell me you're a power lifter. And he had like a cut off like shirt, you know, like Schwarzenegger used to wear the cut off like
shirts. Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I just started. He goes, I am, but I just started like 3 months ago. And I'm like, well, dude, did you used to lift cows or something? And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, and he shows me his tattoo and a big old cow's head on his, and he worked at a stockyard. He used to pick cows up.
Wow.
Like, he was that dude, like, rah.
Damn.
Yeah,
you know,
like
awesome. I'm gonna keep all this footage for B-roll.
Okay. Yeah, it was so crazy, dude. But
dude, oh my goodness. So what else? What else is going on in your world, or anything we need to talk about? I know we've taken some time. So
yeah, no, it's been a little nutty summer, honestly, for me.
Yeah, you're doing the Euphoria stuff, and you're getting plugged in over there, right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I have never done anything like that. I've always thought most of that shit's bullshit, to be honest. And so that's part of my story is like, I've been approached a million times and it's usually, hey, look, my tax bill's bigger than your income, you know, like go away and come talk to me when you've passed that up or something, you know? But I'm kind of into the fitness stuff and I've done a lot of the 23andMe. I've done a couple different genetic tests. And so,
plus Malat's running it. Is Malat running it or is he a part of it?
Yeah, John's one of the top guys. And so he's like, dude, I want you to be in this. I'm just gonna sign you up or whatever. And I'm like, whatever, dude, that's fine. Well, so I did the DNA thing, which was cool. If you've done 23andMe, you kind of know what that looks like. Yeah. It comes back with this cool like analysis of how it impacts your health. So these SNPs, they're called. And my dad died young, as you know, and my mom and dad are both unhealthy people. They're both heavy. Or
Yeah.
my dad was heavy. A lot of cancers and junk in my family. So I've always been kind of keenly aware of health stuff. And so it came back with all this interesting stuff. And then they formulate really clean multivitamins based on these SNPs. So like I have a little higher tendency towards inflammation.
Yep.
So my vitamins have more turmeric in them and things, anti-inflammatory. And it was
That's
interesting because I had all these freaking jars of shit, that I take because I work with a guy out of Houston. I had customized vitamins from him, but I had like 40 of them. And so I had the old guy pill container. You know what I mean? Like
I have it. I have the same exact way. They have like a little Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, morning, PM. So I had
Yeah,
to
yeah.
like prep my vitamins every week because I wasn't compliant. Now I just snake 5 of those in the morning, 5 in the evening, and I'm done.
Good to go.
And feel pretty good on it. My sleep's improved a bit. So I do blood work every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do these for about 90 days. Normally my blood work's in July, but I'm going to wait and do it in October.
Just because you got started.
Yeah, I want to just see because what I'm not certain about is nutritional deficiencies, not just genetic. But it's cool. The people are really good. And I got a little team of guys now, like 7, 8 guys.
Nice.
And
like people that are under you're the.
Yeah, I'm the dude, and then they're under me.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's nothing I'm gonna push on people if they're naturally like interested in health. People just ask me about it because they've seen me post a little bit, and then I just send them I could send you a thing on it. You can check it out, but it's interesting because I thought, God, it's probably gonna be expensive as hell. And then my wife ordered her vitamins from our guy in Houston, and just her, like for the month, she needed like 7 of her 15 things.
Yeah.
Whatever she takes. It was $248. I'm like,
wow.
Woof. And my vitamins from this thing are like, I think they're 170 or something like that.
Big difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So economically it's cool, but no, so it's been busy.
I did the Viome. I don't know if you saw that, but the gut testing, gut health, and just surprises in terms of foods that are good for me. And then
I did Viome before. Yeah.
My inflammation's way off the charts, probably because I train and work out so much in the foods that but I've made some changes and I'm excited to see. I'm going to retest again
All right.
a few months.
What'd you find out? What key couple things?
So so number 1 was my inflammation is super high. Need to get my inflammation down.
Dietarily caused mostly, or?
A lot of it is dietary. Yeah, diet. Yeah. There were things that I love, like chickpeas, aka hummus, that are awful for me.
Yeah.
That's super awful for me is organic bell peppers. Do you know what?
Right. Nightshades.
What's that?
It's a nightshade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I love peppers. I grow peppers.
I love you.
I got a little Italian man garden back there, and what am I gonna do now?
Right.
Give them away. But just some key takeaways specifically on nutrition, what not to put in my body, what to put in my body more of, and what I can kind of like have here.
Yeah, that'll make a huge difference for you.
And then inflammation altogether. So, I felt like I was a lot healthier. I knew I had work, obviously, but I have a lot of work to do. And I don't want to lose because of my lack of self-control. I don't want to die for that. So.
Right. Yeah, that's what motivated me initially, Jesse, is I was always an athlete from the time I was young because my parents were not. Like, I looked at my parents' wedding picture. My dad was fat. I'm like, dude, you're like 20. How are you fat? Like, how's that work? And he just was a nerd. Like, he just never, he played some sports and stuff, but he was never like into it. And I remember like, I was that Rocky generation, so I was cracking the raw eggs and I was taking spirulina in high school and, all kind of stuff. But
I'm still Rocky generation. I just grew up on it a little bit after you did, but that's had a huge play in my life for sure. That whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Those beans, garbanzo, all that nightshades.
Garbanzo beans. Yeah.
Those are all inflammatory. Legumes in general are not.
I freaking love those things. Garbanzo beans. I used to make a nice pasta dish with garbanzo beans, red sauce, and oh my. Yeah.
You know what I'm doing right now that I'm experimenting with? My wife can't quite go there yet.
Because of she has autoimmune issues.
Yeah, she has a couple. Oh, she could do it this way, but she's a very like she feels much better on a lighter, like more vegetable based things. She's eats plenty of protein, but I'm trying a little bit of. I'm trying to do almost a carnivore
Are you really?
diet.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nice.
I've been kind of like ketogenic or paleo for a long time. So
Yep.
um, 12 years, no, 10 years.
Okay.
It was long enough. So I'm trying the carnivore thing, and I mean, it'll be interesting. I like on my power list, it's carnivore 80% is what I wrote. So
There you go.
I eat all my meals that are not with my wife are carnivore. And
Okay.
then our dinner, I'll have, she likes to make quite a few vegetables and stuff. So I'll eat some of that, but
That's
pretty
awesome.
much it's meat or animal products, broth, eggs. I haven't got into the raw liver or any of that shit yet. Some people do
Ooh,
that because I can't.
nice.
I can barely tolerate like cooked liver.
Anthony Hopkins from Silence
Yeah,
of
yeah, little
the
Chianti,
Yeah.
fine Chianti.
That's
But
right.
yeah, if you ever check into like, if you look it up, the people that are into that are like
Shredded.
having some shit happen. Yeah, there are a lot of health issues resolved, a lot of inflammatory response
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, I want to feel well, be well, and look well.
Yeah.
I want the whole thing. I don't
I
want to
can
do
see it
good.
in your skin and your face and whatnot. Like you can see that you're
Getting
running and
healthier.
all of that, and just lifestyle decisions are better. You can
Yeah, for
definitely
sure.
see it.
Starting to get dialed in. I went through Goggins' book again. I read it for a second time. I'm
Yeah.
reading Own the Day by Aubrey Marcus.
Yeah.
And
He's an interesting cat.
unbelievable, man. Yeah, very interesting. But all those things are helping me with this station in life with the studying, and that's going well.
Okay.
I'm doing no less than 2 hours a day, concentrated focus on studying. I took my first practice exam yesterday. Didn't knock it out of the park, but I got a 76. I passed, so I know that I'm on the right track.
Okay.
I've taken all last week. I went through the whole entire coursework again. I pulled out what I thought I needed, and now from the notes that I have, I basically have notes on everything from the entire coursework. I'm going back to each section saying like, what do I need to brush up on? So like,
Good. You're not just using the test to drive it like you were before,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And so
That's gonna
I'm
work
getting
for you.
close. I told my little mastermind pod meeting that I had this morning. There's a group of us, chiropractor, real estate agent, another business owner lady who crushes it. That I should be good to go in about 14 days or less. I feel comfortable. I should be able to take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's going to be key. I mean, obviously you know that already. So I'm glad that you had that revelation around like I was using the test to kind of drive what I was studying,
Yeah.
that's a big thing. So,
Yep.
okay.
And then
Well,
I get the podcast coming out. So the show exists, the YouTube channel, but I get some people that I'm very lucky to have found them. It's really cool. You'll have to see it sometime if you come to Georgia. But I have C-130s, the big fat airplanes. They fly right in front of my office window. Like they turn around because the Air Force Base is right there. So I just had two giant planes catch my eye and fly in front of my office window right now. So
nice. That's super cool.
you come to Georgia, I'll show you. But yeah, so the podcast is about to come out. So an actual real podcast. I got the account set up, the RSS feed. So like all the stuff that we're doing here is going to be put into the actual podcast
Okay.
for marketing and things like this. But as soon
Nice.
as I'm done with this test, I'm going full bore back into like business and
Yeah. Right.
so like I told Alicia, I was like, I'm ready, I'm done. Like I need to get back to it. So
Yeah. Yeah. You'll pass this one. I know it. You got to do it.
I better. I'm not waiting another 6 months.
Well, yeah. So this next 14 days, let's just keep me tuned in if you need to jump on a call or, whatever
Yep.
I can do to make sure you're there and you're ready to go. Let's do
Yep.
that. If you're finding an area that's just not sticking or whatever, we'll find some other resources or whatever you need.
Yeah, it's just reps at this point. I mean, I'm at the point where as long as the next few exams, once I get to it, so once I start getting in the 80, 85 range consistently here in the next few exams, that's when I'm going to take the test. So
Yeah.
once I feel comfortable, get 2 or 3 exams on my belt, 80, 85, feel pretty good about it. I don't know what it is, man. And I talked about it today in my pod, and I'll leave you with this because I know we're running over on time here.
Yeah, you're fine.
2 things. I had 2 concussions when I was a kid. One was playing baseball, and this was weird because I was in the dugout, and kids like to goof around in the dugout. And I was on this aluminum bench, and the kids were jumping off the bench that you sit on to the fence that's in front of the dugout. So we were jumping onto the fence, and we'd like
Oh, yeah.
fence and put our feet in the middle of it and like jump and hang.
Did you fall back?
And I jumped and I missed and I fell back and hit my head off the bench, but I also hit it off the concrete.
Oof.
And I went out after it happened and played it half an inning. And I'm out there standing like in the baseball ready position with my hands on my knees, waiting for fly balls in the outfield. And fly balls were like going over my head because I wasn't even paying attention. And I ended up started dry heaving, but 17 times on the way from the game to the hospital.
You started what?
So I threw up 17.
Oh, threw up. Okay.
From when it happened, like it fucked me up. And I got there and they said it was a mild concussion. They gave me a month, basically limited duty. I was a kid. So it was like during the summer, they're like, you can't do shit for a month. I'm like, no, my life's over.
Right.
But that came to mind because I watched this amazing documentary. I don't know if you have HBO or access to it on streaming. The Many Lives of Nick Buoniconti.
No, I've heard about it. I have not seen this yet.
It's incredible. He was an NFL player that shouldn't have even made the league, but he worked his ass off, made the league, became a Hall of Famer, became a lawyer during that time, became an agent to players. And then his son had a spinal cord injury where he became paralyzed from the neck down, quadriplegic. And his dad, Nick, went on this full bore as a lawyer. He was working for Big Tobacco at one point. He said he hated it, worst decision, but like he was like the top guy at Big Tobacco. And then he went and became a fundraiser for people that had spinal cord injuries. But the reason why I brought that point up, it's an interesting story, was he's had so many hits to the head as a football player that he definitely has some sort of CTE, TBI, whatever they call it now, where he's not the same person anymore. And so they were talking about when you have a concussion or multiple concussions, it changes you. It makes you more impulsive, makes your memory fucked up. It makes you more irritable. And I was like, as soon as when that happened when I was a kid, like I had some of those symptoms. And then there was one other point too. Short-term memory. And so like, I'm going through the study and I'm studying everything, going through it. I've passed similar exams before, like the 6 and 63 are pretty much most of this exam, except for like options and bonds. It's pretty much the same. Similar.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm like, why am I not getting 80s and 90s? And I wonder if there's something that happened like from those instances that screwed up my memory. I don't know. So we're trying to figure it out, being proactive, getting through it.
Okay. Do the cards like Goggins.
Yeah. That's it.
It's cool that, it's not cool, but it's interesting it's funny how things from our youth just kind of come back to us and go, I wonder.
Freaked me out, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that could be it.
Yeah. But the brain is amazingly plastic. Right.
Yeah.
So it can rewire around those injured areas, and you might, part of it might be you're regrowing that area.
You never know. So anyway,
awesome, dude.
I'm trying to get through that so I can get to the other side and actually have some fun in business and continue to grow. Like that's the fun part, is growing, scaling the business. I want to be able to do that. Like this period of study is well past.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's time to be done.
I am done. I'm right there with you.
You'll get it. All right.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time. And
it's been great to be with you. Thank you for asking me to do this.